I heard definitely chickened out.
Man, do you believe that?
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our board meeting this evening. We do have a quorum, so we will get started. We're going to start with the act of reverence and pledge allegiance to the flag, which will be led by Commissioner White.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have minutes from 3 meetings, February 23rd, and February 25th. I'll entertain a motion to approve the 3 sets of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We don't have any student recognition. However, we do have Women's History Month, which will take place in this room this coming Thursday at 5:30. So I would urge all of you to feel free to come out for Women's History Month this coming Thursday at 5:30. We'll be out honoring some of our outstanding women in the Rochester City School District. We're going to go with our speakers list. We have 10 speakers. I will call each speaker up. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Please, once the beeping begins, please conclude your remarks. And we're going to start with our first speaker, which is Miss Elaine Francesco.
Good evening. I am splitting my remarks tonight between 2 topics. First, parents, the board, and the district. Parents and advisory members of the board committees. Thank you for listening to parents and implementing this as a policy. Unfortunately, it still falls short on a couple of points. There's no requirement that these parents poll other parents or report back. At the very least, they should be ad hoc members of the parent council, and part of their responsibility to sit at that table as well, sharing, listening, and reporting both ways. Otherwise, your parent advisors represent only themselves, not the greater construct of district parent. Next, there should be 2 parents on each subcommittee, 1 elementary and 1 high school. These levels have very different concerns and issues, and that needs to be taken into account with policy and decisions. Second aspect, the parent council. I am not a member, but I am a PTA officer and I'm a school-based planning team parent representative. So why did I find out about the new structure by reading it in the DNC yesterday? And why are principals appointing the parents? That should be the last resort when there is no functioning PTA, PTO, or school-based planning team. They should do the election. I've only been at this game 6 years, and in that time there's been no effective district-level parent anything. Committee, council, call it what you will. Parents who've been doing time for more years with more than 1 child would probably say that 6 years is just a blip on the radar at this point. Maybe it really isn't parent involvement or parent engagement. Maybe it's really parent management. daze them, dazzle them, keep them confused. What it's really doing is pissing me off, and that's the politest thing I can say. Now, shifting gears, that was my original topic until I attended the RBGA breakfast on the pros and cons of mayoral control this morning. I admit that I am currently skeptical of Mayor Duffy's plan so far as it goes. I can see for myself that he does not know how things work in the district. He is also playing disingenuous. Several of his items require additional state legislation, not the wave of his hand. However, it is not enough for the school board to say mayoral control just won't work, or perkily point out and say, well, we're the ones who hired the new superintendent. Where is your plan? The superintendent has his plan to address academics, achievement, and retention. You can't rest on that. If you want to maintain the school board structure, you do have to start doing things differently. At this moment, you are almost in limbo. And I know the reception you'll get right now if you approach City Hall about collaboration. But you need to take this time of contention and make it constructive. Brainstorm, work with each other, not against each other, and take the lead in new ways that will support and improve the admittedly dire situation of many of our students and schools. Down the road, I would like to see Rochester cited as an urban education success. It takes a village. It's time for you to come out of the woods and pitch in. Thank you.
Thank you. Glennie Williams? Glennie Williams here? Lori Thomas. Lori Thomas will be followed by Ronald Racone.
I don't know.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, commissioners and community. I must preface my comments by admitting that I was somewhat depressed about this whole situation surrounding education and not our children. And then my sister called me and told me President Obama was on television. As I listened to our nation's leader, I received a blessing. President Obama told me that people who love this country can change it. I am revitalized because I love this country and I love this city. And more importantly, I love my father and I love all of his children. On Sunday, March 14, 2010, I emailed this board an alternate plan for the reconstruction of the failing schools in Rochester City School District. Attached to the email was a list of questions and concerns I had about the superintendent's plan for our schools. As a concerned community member, I requested that the board require the superintendent's office to provide comprehensive answers to my questions. I received those answers today, but they're not comprehensive. They're just more rhetoric. I stand before you now in an effort to once again petition this board not to vote on the superintendent's plan until all interested stakeholders have come together to discuss and present alternative suggestions to the reconstruction of our schools. After researching the information surrounding the information of K-8 schools and larger 9 through 12 schools, I find no evidence of relevant systematic change that produces more than a mediocre increase in success, and then only in specific areas. As well, there is specific evidence to suggest a negative response in reading and no discernible difference in achievement for urban Black and Latino students. We must give this plan more consideration. We must ask more questions, and we must be certain that the expenditure of millions of taxpayer dollars will actually facilitate the educational success of our children. I urge you to table your vote on this issue until more information can be attained about the proposed plan and until other plans can be solicited and investigated for their validity. I would like to end now where the superintendent's presentation on his proposals began, with the W.C. Fields quote, "There comes a time in the affairs of men when he must take the bull by the tail and face the situation." I am not sure that the sarcasm with which Fields made that statement was understood. Being raised in the country, I realize the implications of taking a bull by the tail, and it doesn't take a great deal of imagination to predict the situation that will be faced. Fields was making a satirical comment on the social situation that faced America at that time, and that not much has changed. To take Fields' comment somewhat literally, The choice made to deal with the situation, the choice made to deal with the crappy situation will only end badly. While I don't believe in the Freudian slip, I do believe in divine intervention. The handwriting is on the wall.
Ronald Racone? Ronald Racone here? Ronald Racone? Richard Pavone? Cowboy?
First of all, good evening to the school board, and thank you for letting me speak. I'm a taxpayer. I don't have any children, but I do understand the frustration that the people are going through the city with their children. Now, these comments are kind of toward the mayoral control. When I saw the Mayor Duffy last week on television saying that he might have to raise property taxes for all of us. And I'm wondering, if he does take control, where's the money going to come from for these programs to bus all these children? I know they have to have an education. I understand that. But if our property taxes are going to go up to do this, I'll be on the street with a pitch tent instead of a house. I'm an Italian American, and we're all God's children. We all have to, I know we have to educate our children. I understand that. But when it comes to, I hope it doesn't come to that point if the mayor takes over. And I got some of the things in my mind. I know I don't have time to talk at all, but thanks for letting me talk. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pavone. Charlie Richardson. Charlie Richardson will be followed by Susan Tack.
Thank you very much for having the opportunity to address the board and Superintendent Bizard. Change. That's not what's in your pocket, but it's what's in your mind. And one of the things is we are in a changing world and a changing community. We would like to have, instead of being dictated to, for our children, the neighborhoods, the teachers, the so-called leaders, there are some, okay, and the community overall. We'd like to give you a challenge, okay? The school down there called Franklin, okay? Been a sore for so many years. I've tried over and over and over again to work with Mr. White and Mr. G. Martino and that, but you can't get by the principals. Well, I want to make you an offer. We don't think that that school should be closed. We think we've got to need new leaders in there, and we can save a lot of money in the budget. Instead of having 3 separate principals, plus a Montessori school, and then how many, and you can't tell depending on what day it is, how many vice principals. And again, not many people helping working with these kids. If we could right-size it, meaning these kids that you keep on ignoring this Learning for Life project that is being done for you, but being done for the children really, but to open your eyes. If we had the kids in the right school down there, we need media, we need bio, and we need finance. Why? Mr. White, you're the one that said that these kids should start earning their own money. They got a golden opportunity there with them 3 schools if the kids are in the right one. The bio, we're trying to get that greenhouse open like it is at Jefferson right now. Over 800 plants are planted already. We've been trying for how long? Okay, still not done. I talked to Tom tonight. He says, well, he's got to get back to Ray J. Martino again. But here's the thing. They could plan it. International finance could figure how much profit they would make. You know, what do they got to buy? What's this and what's that? And the media school can do the advertising in that for it. And there's so many different projects that they have in mind that they could do. 3 years ago, I gave you that list of what the students wanted to do. I've never heard anything back except from Mr. White. The thing is, please give us a chance in the community. I know 14621 would be loving that. I know that the business people who run the school would love that. I know the students would love it. And I know there's some real good teachers in there, but they're frustrated too. We need new leadership there. And we don't need 3. We could do it with one real good one, like over at East High School right now. We'd like to steal them.
Thank you.
And maybe three vice principals.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you very much.
Susan Tack, please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. And Ms. Tack will be followed by Ellen Best.
Good evening, Superintendent and members of the board. I'm Sue Tkach, and I've been teaching in the City School District, 34 years teaching visual arts, 31 of them in the City School District. For the past 16 years, I've been teaching at School of the Arts, and I've been an active participant in the audition process at School of the Arts. Many people presume that through this process, we're looking for students who are natural artists, whatever that is, or students who draw really well or who are well-behaved, but none of these objectives are really what we're looking for. Our primary objective is looking for students for whom our program can make a difference in their lives. And as a result of my experience in this school, I'm not only convinced that an education with an arts focus teaches and enhances skills and habits that you've heard about, and I'm sure you will continue to hear about, such as time management, problem solving, creative thinking, collaboration, the sense of empowerment that comes from honing one's craft, and many others. But this just isn't rhetoric. I see on a daily basis the difference that these skills make in our children's lives. But more important is the fact that a program like SOTUS saves lives. What I'm here this evening to address is the fact that fewer and fewer students are being offered the opportunity to benefit from our program because they have fewer and fewer opportunities for art education at the elementary level. It's not an arguable point that many of the students in our city elementary schools do not have opportunities for arts enrichments outside of school. Parents are rarely able to buy students art supplies or enroll them in special programs. Their special relationship with an art teacher may be their only opportunity for the wonderful and engaging world that art may allow them to enter. With the drastic art cuts in the elementary arts, students at our auditions frequently tell us that they haven't even seen an art teacher in the semester before they audition. Although the letters of recommendation written by their teachers do not officially count when we evaluate the students, these letters give us an insight about students that their portfolios may not reflect. I'm currently working with a 9th grade girl whose skills in visual arts are not strong in the traditional sense, but who comes to the art room every day with an enthusiasm for, quote, being delighted, as I like to put it. And I don't have the sense from the other things that she tells me that her life has many other opportunities for joy. She frequently borrows art books from my personal collection, assuring me that she'll take great care of them. Most important, she also frequently reminds me to email her elementary art teacher to let her know how well she is doing and that she is happy. This is a girl who I suspect would not be as happy or enthusiastic about her education and life's possibilities in another educational situation.
If you can just conclude your remarks, please. Your time is up.
She's at SOTA because her elementary art teacher cared about her future. Just a little incident the other day on Saturday when we were doing our last auditions, a little girl was extremely nervous, and I tried to reassure her, and she said, she was from Africa. Her family had just recently emigrated. And when we asked her if she had any questions about the school, she said, "Are the students going to make fun of me?" And we were kind of taken aback because we'd never been asked that question before. So I mentioned it to one of my students who was helping with the auditions later when we were having lunch together, and she said, she asked me the same question too. And I said, well, what did you tell her? And she said, I said that we're all different, and that's one of the things that we value at School of the Arts. And when she came there, she would be focusing on the arts, and that's what all the students had in common. And it's something that I'm going to take with me in the few years that I have left in my educational experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen Best. Ellen Best will be followed by John Gabriel.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First of all, I would like to invite all of you to come to our all-city concert that's Saturday. I think some of you are already planning to be there, and we would love for you to be ready to make a few comments. We haven't had someone do that for a while, and there's going to be over 1,400 parents there. We have an elementary chorus of, probably over 120. I'm not sure of the exact number. And the band this year, elementary band, is 170 students. There is a middle school band and a high school band. I'm not in those areas, so I don't know how many there are. But it's a great opportunity for you to come and hear the best of the best and to see how involved they are in the music programs. I'm speaking because at the last board meeting that I was not in attendance at, I heard that there was some surprise that there are once again being cuts considered to the arts. So I wanted to assure you that this is indeed going on. I will speak to my own building because it's quite secretive in some buildings, and the process is similar to last year's process. The principals were told to cut approximately 10%, and this time in the areas of library, physical education, vocal music, instrumental music, and I said phys ed, anyway, those. No social workers, psychologists this time, which that's great. But when the principals have to do this, they have very hard choices to make. And I just want you to know that it does impact the arts programs. For example, in our building, last year, we had an instrumental music teacher 3 days a week. This year, we have an instrumental music teacher 2 days a week. 45 schools is a pretty big building. So you can imagine it's already been impacted. Come to find out, next year, we'll have an instrumental music 1 day a week. So the inequity in services is a direct result of this kind of process. So I would urge you to really take a look at that and see what's going on. The same thing with our art program. We have a wonderful art program in our building, and I want to get these numbers right. We have a full-time art teacher this year. I better get my glasses. And another art teacher for 2.5 days a week. Last year we had a full-time art teacher and another art teacher for 3 days a week. Next year we're supposedly going to have a full-time art teacher and a part-time teacher 1 day a week. So you can see the erosion of the program, and I would be willing to, as I have in the past, collect data about this so that you can see exactly how it's impacting school by school when principals do it this way. But no one knows. It's very secretive. It's not transparent. I'm concerned because already our high school programs have eroded. My kids, when they come out of 6th grade chorus, unless they get into SOTA, they don't have a place to perform. There aren't vocal groups in the high school. That's why there's no all-city high school chorus. And I think that's really sad. And I just hate to see it getting, instead of getting better, getting worse. I'd also urge you to find out whatever happened with the arts panel that you funded, because I don't think they would have recommended the kind of cuts that are going on. But I thank you for your support in the past and hope to see you on Saturday, 1 o'clock, East High School.
Thank you. John Gabriel. John Gabriel will be followed by Diane Hamilton.
Good evening, Superintendent Brizard and members of the board. I'm a music teacher at the School of the Arts, and I say with pride that my entire 26-year teaching career has been spent in the city. Some of you know me personally. I've had the privilege of teaching your children, so let me personalize my remarks a bit. If one of your own children came up to you and said, I want to start playing the violin, I want to take up the sax, I want to sing, you would do everything you could to make that happen. You'd buy an instrument and find them a teacher because you know instinctively that this is a good thing, and you'd be right. Music teaches kids so many different things: self-discipline, self-expression, teamwork, consistent effort, that parents everywhere try to make sure that their kids get that training. But in the city, many parents don't have the means to make that happen, and they are looking to you to make sure that their kids have the same musical opportunities that kids in the suburbs get. I say with pride that School of the Arts is one of the City School District's success stories. Our students have been part of youth orchestras and have graduated to music schools like Berkeley and Eastman. Our students sing with the Rochester Philharmonic at Christmas. One of them recently performed with the Rochester Philharmonic as a guest soloist. Our band annually takes top honors at a national festival, and our graduation rate is about 95%. And 9 out of 10 of those kids go on to college. This is not an accident. The schools that produce the highest academic achievement in the United States today are spending 20 to 30% of the day on the arts, with special emphasis on music. School of the Arts kids get quality arts training every day, and parents want their kids to be a part of that. We annually have 1,000 applicants for 200 spaces because parents know that what we do works. And we build off the work that the elementary arts teachers do. And if they don't have the chance to work with kids because their hours and positions have been cut, then every secondary music program, including ours, will suffer. Music teachers are so important to their schools, especially at the elementary level. In addition to the joy of music, they give kids a place to succeed. They give their school communities a reason to celebrate with concerts and performances. They bring pride and self-esteem and a sense of accomplishment to children who sorely need it. Now they need your assurance that they will be allowed to teach and build quality programs. Stability is so important. The best programs grow and thrive because the same person is there from year to nurture and guide it. How can you build when the earth is constantly shifting beneath your feet? The district has lost far too many good young teachers who sought and found that stability somewhere else. Commit to your music and arts teachers. Support them. You'll be surprised at some of the benefits you'll get. You need reading and math scores to go up? Research shows that music instruction does just that. Want more city kids to get into college? Music does that too. Students with band and orchestra experience attend college at a rate twice the national average. Want to keep kids out of trouble? There's a very high correlation between healthy self-esteem and the study of music. And the sooner we get kids involved in a strong music program, the greater the benefits. Given what we know, you should be looking to increase your arts budget across the district. No one in the community would argue. 95% of your parents believe that music is a key component in a well-rounded education. They know that we give their kids discipline, a skill, and a passion that will enrich their lives. What we do works. Why would we even consider cutting it? Let us do our jobs. Give us your assurance that we have the support and stability to build our music programs and serve our kids. You would seek and demand it for your own children. Now please do the same for the parents and children you serve.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel.
Thank you.
Diane Hamilton.
March has been declared by President Obama and Governor Patterson as Music in Our Schools Month. If music is reduced or taken away, the state and national standards cannot be taught. Standard number 1 says students will participate and perform music. Standard number 2 says students will compose original music. How can you even think about a classroom teacher taking over a music teacher's position when they can't even read music themselves, more or less to compose it? Standard number 3 says you will perform and participate in the opportunities in the school and in the community. Without in-school performances, there will be no community music activities, such as Hispanic and Black History Month participation at your school board meetings. The Memorial Art Gallery offers Hispanic and Black Month history celebrations, which our students perform at. The tree lighting ceremonies, my students perform at the Red Wings game, and they sing the Star Spangled Banner, as also the God Bless America. We wouldn't have any all-city chorus or band because there wouldn't be enough support in the elementary school to provide that for the secondary schools. All-county chorus. We had 8 students represent Rochester this year in the all-city chorus. There would be no representation with the other school districts that says we have a music program. And the world's largest concert, which I did see Mr. White at our school. We are represented in 150 different countries as having good music programs. That would be no more if music is cut. And also the Hochstein Youth Symphony Orchestra, which Mrs. Powell's daughter performed in at NYSSMA. That would not happen if we did not have elementary music programs. Music cannot be taught by classroom teachers or reduced to schools whose principals want students to have music. This is discriminatory because students who do not live in that area cannot attend that school. How are students to know by 7th grade whether they have talent or not to go to the School of the Arts if they have not been given any kind of music instruction or enough to find out if they have talent or not? It is ridiculous to start music in 7th grade when other countries begin far below this and even before kindergarten. Students in the Rochester City School District cannot begin to compete with other districts who have music programs. Please reconsider cutting 10% off the top, which includes music, art, gym, and library, which will reduce students' access to music instruction. Think of the students first, which is one of our logos. We cannot, Superintendent, create a masterpiece without the materials to create a masterpiece with. Please reconsider your cuts, and please do not let Rochester become music no longer in our schools.
Thank you. We will now move on with the superintendent's report. Mr. Superintendent.
Good evening. I'm going to ask the board, if possible, please come to the front row. Before we actually get started, just want to make a couple of announcements. I'm sure you've read some of it in the paper today. It is with great pride and some sadness to announce that Michelle Hancock, Dr. Hancock, if you're here, please stand up, stepped out. Oh, bad timing. The new superintendent in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So our loss, their gain. She, I believe, was finalized, I think, Monday evening in Kenosha. So I want to congratulate Michelle. She's been a tremendous support employee, head of HR, principal in the district. I'm sure we'll talk again about her sometime in May or June, but I wanted to make sure that I recognize her in front of the audience tonight. We also have another member of our cabinet who was appointed superintendent of the East Rochester School District, Ray J. Martino. Dr. G is actually not here tonight. He's actually in East Rochester, I believe, at a board meeting. So he's not sure if he's observing or just going there. But to have two members of your cabinet appointed as superintendents in the same week, I think is a great feather in our cap here in the city schools. The recognition that we have talented folks who are now beginning to lead districts in and around Rochester. I also want to welcome a visitor to our city, Laura Kelly. Laura, if you're here, just stand up. Laura is an intern at the Harvard Urban Superintendent's Program, and she's visiting us this week. And if the match works, she'll be interning with us much of next year. But Laura is I guess, wants to be a superintendent. She's a part of the Harvard program, and I want to welcome her to the city of Rochester. Welcome, Laura. I also want to give a special thanks to the budget team for their hard work in putting this year's book together. As we go through our deliberation over the next few weeks and months, their work, of course, will continue, and you'll get your final book in May. So I want to publicly thank them for all the wonderful work that they have done. So tonight's presentation was a request made by Commissioner Elliott. We want to make sure that we followed up. So I'll ask Jeanette to come up, Dr. Silvers, talk a little bit about the Office of Accountability.
Was known as the Research and Evaluation Testing Department, facilitating testing for students in kindergarten through grade 12. RE&T provided assistance and support to measure the effectiveness of a variety of district programs. It has developed into the Office of Accountability, which provides culture of accountability where leadership should be clear about what it is trying to measure and create a clear definition of success with associated goals. What do we need? A strong system of accountability which focuses on performance. Systemic, fair, accurate, and coherent. Transparent, and enabling and allowing for adjustment. Systemic means that it includes accountability for all stakeholders, from central office, schools, principals, teachers, students, families, and the public. Fair, accurate, and coherent, the system sets clear and consistent goals, provides key access to necessary information, measures progress, and has rewards and consequences. It must be transparent. The system and stakeholders are transparent with results and information and create opportunities for feedback and dialogue. Enabling and allows for adjustment. It allows individuals to be innovative, and adjust to figure out what works and what doesn't to solve problems and provide high-quality service delivery. The how, the Office of Accountability is sharply focused on the district core values: achievement, equity, and accountability. Our charge facilitates others by evaluating how processes and programs can improve. We monitor the accountability and progress of what the district, schools, and the education of our students. We connect with our partners to solve problems and provide extra resources to enhance the quality of our system. Our motto is students first, last, and always. If you can measure it, you can improve. What are our focuses is on the how: race to the top, reporting to the state and federal government, automation, easy access to data, research requests for data. We are in a pilot program in Race to the Top, which comes under the reauthorization of the Elementary Secondary Education Act, better known as No Child Left Behind, which gives schools more leading indicators as to how their school is moving towards success. It includes the following at this time. We're linking students to courses, courses to teachers, teachers to school. We're looking at the whole child, the whole school, and the whole assessment process, instead of just the one leading indicator of the assessment in ELA and math. We're preparing right now schools and helping them to transition from the compliance-driven incentive system to a performance incentive system. The second focus will be on reporting to the state, federal government. We provide accurate and timely information regarding testing procedures, reporting, and results around federal and state mandates that includes, but not limited to, grades 3 through 8 testing, Regents exams, and behavior reports. Our third focus is on automation and easy access to data. Right now, we are able to provide schools and district staff with immediate information using online resources that includes the following: benchmark assessments, early literacy screening, progress monitoring for elementary schools, and tools to assist high schools in tracking students in grades 9 through 12. We're still working on more to come this year and into the beginning of next year. Our fourth focus, research requests for data. We conduct research in response to internal and external questions raised around education policy measures. We develop goals for monitoring and evaluating the performance of schools, principals, and students, and oversee the review and approval of requests to conduct research or evaluation activities with the district. The Office of Accountability does not work alone. It is not in isolation. It is within every department in this building and every school, every student. Thank you. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. And one of the things I wanted to make a connection for the board this evening is that you have a few resolutions in your packet which are coming forward as part of our work in terms of creating the right kinds of databases, a data warehouse, to begin to create a kind of infrastructure for us to mine data to provide the kinds of information that you need to make decisions about what is effective and what is not. This morning, in fact, I believe Commissioner White may have talked a little bit about this at the forum, the RBJ forum, talking about the right kinds of access to data. As you know, as a district, we've struggled a little bit with the kinds of systems that we have. Chancery does not have a data warehouse. So part of our goal is to create the kinds of systems we can mine information so this office can produce the kinds of report leading in summative kinds of information that we need to make decisions about programs, about the effectiveness of our schools, and the effectiveness of our people as well. So thank you, Jeanette. Thank you. Yes, that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Silvers. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Questions for the superintendent on this
President,
report,
Evans?
starting with Commissioner Elliott?
Let me thank the Office of Accountability for this report, and I'm going to ask these questions without having had the opportunity to have thoroughly read it. So I have been critical of the Office of Accountability because I've always viewed it as a data collection. When we've received reports, it's only been data. In other words, we have not had the information or the narrative to be able to interpret the data. And I see the Office of Accountability as much more than data collection. The department needs to help you, Mr. Superintendent, and needs to help us as the board to be able to promote this district. And I have never seen this department being able to do that. I remember last year when we were talking about the closing of Franklin, and there was some data that was being presented, and there was a spike in the data. I asked the question, why is there the spike? The response was, I did not know. I don't know. I don't think that we can continue to have those kinds of responses to the board if we're going to be the ones, including you, Mr. Superintendent, to go out and promote this district. So it seems to me that the department, unless I'm missing something, as I said, I have not read this report, it needs to be quite more sophisticated, quite more research-oriented, more in a position to be able to interpret the data on a more sophisticated level than it has in the past. Again, I have not read that report, but that's what I'm expecting that this department is able to do. I see the department as being a very powerful department, and it can be a powerful department, helping to influence what we do in this district. In the past, I had not seen that, and I'm hoping that that's what I'm going to see in the future, that we can take what this office has collected and reported on, and we can use it in a very sophisticated, intelligent way. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you. Commissioner White.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about, and you folks out there would know about it, is during our retreat, was how we can use this data to inform our work as a board. And the evolution of this district's understanding of how to best use information and information technology, where we began in 2007 figuring out where our kids were going to graduate by literally taking yellow legal pad notes about where kids were on their journey. Here we are in 2010, I think in 2009, I think we voted for, 2009 or 2008, where we voted for the money for dedication. 2008. Now we finally have a system where we can monitor, manage, and motivate our kids. Everybody's talking about accountability and what's the board doing about accountability. That is one of the major transformative changes this board has made. We've taken our information system and gone to the 21st century. But in any event, Mr. Superintendent, during the retreat, we talked about taking the dedication and getting regular reports from dedication that would tell us where our district was, let's say on a report card basis, on a quarterly basis, or when tests are being administered. Has the administration figured out when the board could get these reports? And I want folks to know what we're talking about, what this board is talking about. We're talking about knowing, let's say, for example, in January of 2010, how many of our kids 6 months later are going to graduate, so they don't have to wait for a year after the graduation data comes in. I think it's time for this board to have regular periodic reports about where our kids are at in their graduation journey. Do we have any sense as to when we might be getting those reports?
Well, that's something we can actually create at almost any given day, depending on the kinds of data we're talking about. As part of our strategic plan, we're looking to provide, we call them a CIA report, so that there's mini reports we can get to the board on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. Really, we can do it as often as we want to. So really, it's up to the board. Some data will not come to us, of course. It won't change every single month. So some things may remain static for us every 6 months or every year. Some things, of course, will change. Things like attendance, things like suspension. Right now, you already get information from me monthly on our suspension and arrest data. We can provide dedication reports as well. We are looking to create a structure where we can do that. We'll talk internally. But right now, let's say we can give you something just about every single month on what we're doing.
Well, and again, I think people need to understand when the board talks about dedication, we're talking about accountability, because those reports will be generated, and as we talked about in the retreat, we'll have a sense as a board on a real-time basis where our students are at, and where our students are at, and therefore it will tell us where our teachers are at, it will tell us where our principals are at. It is, if you haven't seen, I put the question this morning to people, how many people out there, except district staff, we'll include district staff, how many people out there have actually worked with dedication? Raise your hand. That's, with all due respect, that's not enough. You should see this system. If you want to know what your board is doing to improve accountability, what this administration has crafted and created, you need to see dedication. I'm sure we can make it available to people. This is a phenomenal system. And what the board has said during his retreat, we want regular, periodic reports. And what I would ask is, you decide, Mr. Superintendent, when we receive them. It is now March of 2010. I would like to see at least one report before our kids graduate. So I would have a sense, so that at least the Excellent Student Achievement Committee, I think we agree that that's where these reports would be submitted. We have a sense as to how many of our kids are going to graduate 3 months from now. I don't think we should wait for Commissioner Steiner to tell us that a year later. So again, I would suggest what comes out of that retreat is you tell us, you're the experts in the field, you tell us when we would get those reports, and then let's see if we can get one before the end of the year.
So, Commissioner, if I may, just to piggyback on all of that, dedication serves right now grades 9 to grades 12. What we're looking to create with this new data warehouse are the kinds of reports. If you remember last year, we talked about creating dashboards that will be on the web that the public can see. We can decide which I guess data sets will be presenting to the public, and then be able to drill down, depending of course on your level of access, drill down and watch individual students' progress, or parent can watch his or her child's progress. So going from just 9-12, but looking at the entire K-12 continuum. That is part of the work that we're trying to launch, but we've understood, of course, before we can actually make that really sort of robust, system-wide K-12, you need to have the kind of system we can mine that very easily. Right now, as I said, well, dedication does it for the high schools. Our chancery program does not really do that well for the K-12 system. So what you'll see coming forward, series of dashboards you'll be able to see online. You can drill down from there specifically to a particular child. And what Dr. Silvers talked about in terms of attaching students to teachers, to courses, to schools, the work that is being done at the federal government level and the state level is aligned, of course, with the work that we're trying to do here. So there is this sort of agenda that goes from Washington to Albany to here, where we're trying to provide that kind of answer and solution to the public and to the board and to our staff, of course.
A couple of years ago, I think one of the reasons why the graduation rate, which is still nothing to write home about, but went up from 13 points is because we were able, even though it was kind of like rock, paper, scissors, was that we were able to get or to see at each and every school how many kids were in danger of not graduating and what their projected rate would be, and how many of those kids that were in danger of graduating, how many we could get to the next level to make sure that they can graduate. My recommendation is, and I think we mentioned this in the retreat also, was to kind of have these reports. I'm more so interested. I'm interested in ELA, math, and all that also. But the graduation reports, I would be interested in that on a quarterly basis. I know that to see where we would be as of March 31st, 2010. What is our projected graduation rate? What do we project that rate to be? And then do it again in June. What's going to be that? And then again in August when we get done with our August graduates. And that's something that can be done now, can it?
Absolutely. And of course, you would make assumptions that students would pass all their courses moving forward, etc. But the answer is yes, that can be done. But I would ask that you ask a follow-up question. Once you have the data, the question is what's being done to get kids to completion. Because having data is one thing. Using it to change practice or to inform practice really is the more important question.
And I'm very interested in the individual schools, because a lot of people don't understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Superintendent, what the state does is take all of our students, right, and then just throw them in the denominator. Yes. So if we have a school that's bringing down the numbers, we need to, I personally want to know what school that is, and I'm going to be asking questions like, okay, what are they doing there at that school that's dragging down the other one? So if you have a school with a larger population and their graduation rate is in the toilet, that's gonna have an effect on our overall number. I think we can get that information. I think it's important that it's put out there, and the public should know also where we are projecting. Kind of like, you know, stock market, where we are at the close of the day. The graduation rate is this projected. Commissioner White.
Yeah, really briefly, when we did that in 2007, there were some ugly conversations when Dr. Dice Fawcett and C. Michael Robinson came up with this list. There were some really ugly conversations, because I got on the airway and I talked about where certain schools were at, and there were people who called in. Some of them tried to pretend like they weren't members of the Rochester City School District and dogged me out for calling them out. But that's what accountability is about. Now we have a system that can keep track of where we're at. This is where the conversation needs to go. But I do need to say to Dr. Silver and to Jean-Claude, there was some very good news about the last set of numbers, and I know Jean-Claude has talked about this. That 700 additional numbers that the Commissioner talked about, Commissioner Steiner talked about, that to me showed that we have a better handle on our student population. We had 700 more students in our denominator. And some would say that explained why our graduation rate went down. Well, whether you accept that as an explanation or not, the fact is it showed me that it was better than doing it, as you say, rock, paper, scissors, better than doing it with a yellow legal pad. We had real control, or better control, of our student population, which means we can better manage, motivate, and monitor our kids. So I'm expecting, and I think the superintendent has built up this expectation himself, that next year, to answer the question that someone put, what is the board doing? I'm telling you, I put my money personally in dedication. I believe it will produce the results. Now, we got to do the accounting. And we have a system, the board has developed a system or suggested a system where this data comes to us in excellence in student achievement. And I agree with the president. We should get something by maybe the end of the month. It doesn't have to be perfect. We'll sort of figure our way through it. But again, I think you get people start talking about, okay, wait a second. Now they're looking at my school. And as you said, in 2007, we saw schools where 75% of the kids on rock, paper, scissors, their kids were at risk of not graduating. And that allowed us to focus our attention. We got a computer system now that can do that. I think we are going to make major strides.
Commissioner Williams.
But the dedication has been in existence for almost a year, so why haven't we gotten the information, any of this information yet?
Well, Commissioner, we have the information. It's never really been, I mean, if you request it, we can give it to you, but we have it internally.
Okay.
Have you asked
That's
for it,
not
Commissioner Williams?
Not a question.
Didn't get it?
I always go, I'll go on dedication.
Right.
But I mean, you know, the board is saying we haven't gotten it, and the issue is, I guess, as a board, we've never requested it.
I agree. We have.
Yeah.
We should.
Commissioner Powell.
I wanted to speak to the fact that there were 700 more students in our graduating population. We actually graduated more students this year than last year. Percentage did go down. And I think that this is a byproduct that Commissioner White, you ought to be able to take credit for as well. Besides going on and demanding that we get an accounting for those students, where are they at risk or of failing, or are they going to graduate? Because of your effort, human beings in schools took an interest in other human beings in schools, maybe for the first time. When young people realize that someone is looking over their shoulder and cares what the outcome is, they might be more motivated to stay in school than they were, and stick it out and try a little harder. And that's perhaps part of the reason that they didn't drop out, that they are still in our cohorts and part of our student population. I think data takecation are wonderful tools. I saw the presentation with you. Robust system. But I don't want to give all the credit to machines that belong to people. When people care about other people, some fantastic things can happen. And I want to give you credit where credit is due for raising that awareness, for for turning the light switch on and making people look around and say, you know, do I have a responsibility to care about the people around me?
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz?
The only comment I really have is that we have, you know, we have an opportunity with our committees to really look at this at more detail. The problem is, it's always a challenge to get through an agenda at our regular business meeting to try and get all the information. So I think my suggestion would be that we include as part of the agenda, an agenda item for the Excellence and Student Achievement Committee, a portion of that really takes a much more specific and detailed look at these kinds of numbers on a periodic basis that's more comfortable with you and your staff, Superintendent. And then for the other board members, we know when those meetings are, that we can certainly be a part of that, you know, and if you can include that, for a lot of us, we try and get to these meetings, but if you include that in the beginning of the agenda, we can be there in the beginning, and then we can allow the rest of the committee to go on and do, you know, the rest of their business for that day. But I think it's an important point to be able to get much more specific information. And then I think the report to the board on a monthly basis is really a summary report that really outlines some of the bigger highlights of things that are going on, the greater variance to the data that you're collecting, and at least allow us to get an opportunity to look at it. It would just seem to me we just don't have the time to really dive deep into the information you're going to provide us, but at committee levels you certainly can.
Exactly. And Commissioner, you're absolutely correct. One of the reasons why, if you take a look at the work we've been talking about, creating the scorecards and the dashboards, so when you look at dedication, it's important that we ask the right questions so we can give the right level of information to the board. Sure, you don't want to get into the weeds and find out how Johnny and Mary and Jose are doing at Franklin Finance and School of the Arts, how many credits they have, but you want to see things perhaps in the aggregate, and the question is what we're looking for. And those we can create for the board. So we can bring different scenarios. We can do this as often as the board wants. So the system exists. And be proud to say it was part of its creation. So thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to standing committee reports. I'm going to start with the governance report. Commissioner Campos is ill, and she reports that the Board Governance Committee met on March 8th to discuss proposed 2010-2011 board's goals and deliverables. The board will address these goals at our next board meeting, and I believe the draft board goals that came out as a result of the retreat, I think they may be in the budget book. They also discussed key dates for the superintendent's contract review and evaluation. They also addressed the effective governance model, proposed schedule for meetings of the full board and committees, and the proposal for governance team leadership and development program facilitated by NISBA and Tim Kramer. The effective governance model, at the meeting the committee discussed and compiled proposed schedule for meetings of the full board committees. Commissioner Campos has asked to provide feedback on the proposed model to our staff liaison, which is Ms. Lee, by Tuesday, April 13th. And the proposed schedule was compiled in an attempt to standardize the board's monthly meeting schedule. I believe you all received that by email. The model calendar for March 2010 was the first Thursday of every month, open meeting to be used if necessary for special meetings and executive session. The second Thursday of the month, monthly agenda and review and work sessions to be used for reviewing monthly resolutions and receiving information on topics of interest. The third Tuesday of the month was for committee meetings, and the third Thursday of the month was committee meetings, and then obviously the fourth Thursday of the month would be our monthly business meeting. Obviously that would shift if there were holidays in there. It is suggested that 2 or more of the board's committees meet on the third Tuesday and the third Thursday of every month to allow for at least 4 committee meetings every month, assuming that every committee will not meet every month. Governance team leadership, the committee recently reviewed and discussed the attached proposal for a board governance team leadership development program administered by the New York State School Boards Association. Again, that was sent out to the board. And we will have the opportunity to discuss this with Mr. Kramer on 3/30/2010 at 5 o'clock to discuss any questions or concerns around the proposed training. The program is usually facilitated in a board retreat and can be customized to deal with the board's most pressing issues. Some of the suggested topics are governance team performance review and setting priorities, governance team roles and responsibilities, developing your communications plans, for running effective school board meetings, fiscal management, and hard times, and we could pick from those which ones are of interest. The committee has asked the board to suggest topics of interest to cover at the proposed board reform training session. The due date for suggested topics on this was 3/19/10. To date, I don't believe, Ms. Lee, I don't know if you've received any suggestions. If anyone has suggestions, please forward those to Ms. Lee. And the next committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, April 14th at 5 p.m. At this time, the committee will continue the discussion on the board's annual work plan and proposed schedule of meetings and proposed board reform training. Respectfully submitted, Melissa Campos, Chair of the Board Governance and Development Committee. We'll continue on with committee reports, and Commissioner Cruz in the Policy Committee.
Thank you, President Evans. The Policy Committee met on Tuesday, March 16th, and we had a number of items we discussed. We discussed the bidders policy, which we're going to be talking a little bit further about this evening, change order policy and proposal, and the continuing status report on our policies, our general policies, and the policy manual. We've had some interesting discussions, and the staff has actually had some very long discussions with regard to the bidder policy, and we're going to, as I said, talk a little bit more about that in detail. Really, the conversations really centered on, in terms of disqualifying bidders and establishing an appeals process, and we're trying to do that without having to affect a lot of change on the policy, and again, we'll get more detail about that. Based on the information that we had at committee, we did proceed with a unanimous vote to bring it to full board. With regard to reviewing policies on change orders, one of the things that three things that we're sort of recommending is, number one, that board members examine the information on a quarterly basis. It's very critical, based on a lot of information that we get with regard to the change order policy, that we're creating a system by which we at least have on a quarterly basis the information with regard to those changes that do take effect. We have in it the second thing we're going to do is create a written process, written policy, so that you'll have at least an understanding of how that system works and the thresholds that we get to. Basically, there's like a 10% threshold in which decisions have to be made by staff, and ultimately really having all the information ahead of time so that we're not having to wait for the full year or the end of the contract to make definitive decisions on whether to accept it after the project really has already been put to bed. And again, those processes will be put in writing. And lastly, we have been spending a good amount of time going through the policy manual. As you know, it's about 6 inches thick. We have divided up into policies that are of urgent nature and mandated policies, and we are now going through the process of running through those, looking at those, and make sure that we are still compliant. And I think the staff has done a great job, and we've made some good headway to finishing that part. And we're hoping to get into the second tier, which things are of lesser, I don't want to say lesser importance, but lesser in terms of mandated. We're hoping to get those into May and June, and the goal is to finish the entire policy manual by the end of this year, and I feel confident that we're going to be able to do that. Our next policy meeting is on April the 20th at 5:30. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Elliott in the Community and Intergovernmental Relations
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to take a moment, a point of personal privilege. It does connect to the committee, but I wanted to talk about the cuts that we are going to be making in our budget, and I know that we've had people from this audience who've come up and spoken in relation to not cutting certain programs, and the fact of the matter is we've got to make the cuts. Now, where we make them is something that we have to consider, and we certainly do appreciate the input. But the fact is the cuts have to be made. When you look at our budget, more than almost $500 million is in salaries and compensation benefits. Part of it is in fixed obligations, about $90 million, then about another $12 million in capital outlays. The bulk of the money is in salaries. What we need to look at, and I would offer this to the unions, is that if we're concerned about children, then we begin to look at how do we renegotiate that huge line item called salary and compensation and employee benefits. Because teachers and employees are getting the bulk of the money. Now, you say you're concerned about our children, you want them to have arts programs. Then let's get real and talk about where the money is going. And if you're serious about that, how can we come together collaboratively and work on reducing salaries, reducing employee benefits for the benefit of our children, if you're concerned about children. Now, as that relates into the committee, my committee, is this intergovernmental relations. There are cuts that are going to be made on the state level. We can't control that. But we're still trying to be selfish. We can't be selfish any longer. We've got to be in this thing together. And so if you're willing to talk with me about how we can go on the state level and talk about, what they're doing, and everybody is hurting. But it seems to me that, unions and people want to keep their money. We can no longer do that. We've got to work, if it's going to be a healthy community, a healthy district, we got to look at how we all can take some of this pain that is inevitable. The strategies that the unions use with regard to you having people to come up and speak and being on television, you can do it, but what's it going to do? I'm not intimidated by it, nor do I think you want us to be. But at the same time, you say you want the best for our children. Obviously don't at a 46% graduation rate. So how do we, if we want arts and if we want these programs, let's look at how do we try to work together as opposed to being individualistic and we taking the money from the district at the expense of the children. So I'm willing on my level, and I'm sure Commissioner Powers is in the Finance Committee, how do we begin to work on the state level, because we've all got pain. And how do we work here at the district in order to ensure that we've got a budget that is going to be representative of everybody as best as it can be. So, you could come up and you could continue to, be at the podium. We got a job to do here. I'm just telling you, we got a job to do. And it's going to hurt some people. We've got to do it. So that's my speech on that. We got to do it. No way around it. We have to do it. And then, Mr. President, lastly, the committee is going to be meeting on April 1st. We're going to talk about, we're going to try to develop a legislative agenda and develop board goals. We're going to be looking at some of the cities where they're doing mayoral control, and we're also going to look at, how we can develop a plan with regard to community input for mayoral control. Thank you, Mr. President. That's my report.
Thank you. Commissioner, when do you want, well, probably as soon as possible, ideas for the legislative agenda?
We will let you know. We're going to be discussing the plan for it in the meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Powell in the Finance Committee.
I might start with a point of personal privilege as well.
Okay, point of personal privilege, granted.
I drove my daughter, Margaret, to all-county orchestra practice on a Friday night, and I was sandwiched between two full buses, one from Webster, one from Penfield, filled with vocalists, string players, band instrumental players. Margaret was not only the only representative of the School of the Arts, she was the only representative of the Rochester City School District. To think that our budgets would be balanced on the backs of art and music is a dreadful thought. It was bad enough that I was aware, sandwiched between two full-size buses as I was, that Margaret was only there because she had private instruction, and that a district the size of Rochester couldn't offer significant enough music and instrumental instruction for our students to reach the same level that our suburban neighbors do. I was close to tears that day, and as much as I shepherd our district's budget through its process, the idea of cutting arts and music is not on the table for me. I'll just make that clear to everyone here. And we can browbeat our staff into having a conversation about renegotiating contracts, but I don't think that's how you win hearts and minds. So let me get on to the Finance Committee report. I hope I'm here for the vote. I do have to leave at 7:30, however, because I had a commitment before we changed our board meeting date, and I can't break it.
I do want to move up to resolutions, then if we can move quickly,
Yes.
we're almost there.
The total impact of the Finance Committee work was extensive because we have a number of resolutions for facilities improvements. And I want to point out that Van asked some really good questions at that meeting, essentially saying, what if we didn't do capital improvement? What if we could roll that money into and close our budget gap with it? Well, the fact is, you can't use that money that way. We borrow because we are only able to borrow because we're making capital improvements. We cannot borrow to close a deficit gap. And so if you look carefully at the proposed capital improvements this year, we're looking at a new roof, we're looking at a new boiler system, both of which are essential for good fiscal stewardship of our physical plants. And we're looking at a lot of replacement of windows, which with high efficiency glass, which can reduce our heating costs and overall be good financial stewards by saving energy. We wouldn't go about the business of replacing windows just to replace windows. There's a financial benefit to us in doing that. So that defines the bulk of the work that's being proposed in the capital improvement resolutions, which are resolutions 703 through 715, educational facilities. A couple of procurement and supply resolutions and information technology. We asked, Van essentially asked the same question about that spending. Couldn't we roll over that money and close the budget gap with that? And the answer really was, when it comes to technology, it's E-ratable. We spend it on that purpose, or we lose the funding, or we lose the reimbursement. One of them is an ongoing, essentially, subscription charge. We have to basically keep it in place in order to be able to utilize our computer software systems. So in a nutshell, all of the recommendations that came before the Finance Committee were approved for recommendation to the full board. We do have our monthly financial reports. I move at this time that they be received.
Motion to approve, to receive monthly financial reports. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion around monthly financial reports. All those in favor of receiving monthly financial reports, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Powell.
Our regular Finance Committee meeting for next month is April 15. We do have an extensive budget schedule. The very next item on that agenda is tomorrow night at School of the Arts. It's another listening tour. It's a conversation. And those of you who were at last night's conversation, except for the staff members, all thought it was very productive. And I say except the staff members because they really had to get up early the next morning to go to work and would like to have left sooner. But the community that gathered, I think, and Mr. Richardson, correct me if I'm wrong, but felt that there was a real genuine dialogue. And I had a great time and felt very engaged with everyone who was there. And I encourage my colleagues to go to the one at School of the Arts tomorrow night at 7. Is that right? 7? 6. I'm sorry, 6 tomorrow night. Thank you, Elaine, for correcting me. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's a public hearing on March 29th, correct? Budget public hearing? March 29th here. Commissioner White and the ESA committee.
Yeah, just a very quick follow-up. I'm going to do this at breakneck speed. I wanted to thank John, Jerome, and Joyce for that meeting we had at Finance. Commissioner Powell is correct. We were looking for any opportunity to develop savings, and they made it very clear to me that there just wasn't any opportunity of savings, as Commissioner Powell had indicated, but I appreciate their indulgence and the information they provided. It clarified a lot of things for me. I also want to say, as a point of personal privilege, I went to the sous chef event the other night, and I think we need...
Iron Chef.
Was that?
Iron Chef.
Iron Chef, Iron Chef. You guys were the sous chefs, right? And I think we need to do this. I know we're running out of time, but we need to hold up those things that we do really well. And Jean-Claude Bizard, I think I saw the principal of East. He was here a few minutes ago. There he is. He was a sous chef. Bob Duffy was a sous chef. Good example of us coming together, not over mayoral control or anything like that. Dr. Kim Dice-Fawcett was a sous chef. Let's see, did I miss? Oh, Melissa was a sous chef. And the food, I had my 10-year-old with me. It was a great time. The music was good. They played a little old school. They played a little. It was really, really nice. And it was a good event to attend to, so I wanted to...
Nobody got sick?
Nobody got sick. And who won? Who won? Do you know?
Anibal, was it Shanique? Anibal? The winning student. There were two.
All right. And again, and I know you know this, Mr. President, but we don't need to have student recognition to recognize not only the good thing our students do, but the good things our staff do to keep our district in a positive place. With respect to the excellent student achievement, we met as a committee as a whole on March 11th to review Resolution 725, which we all have in our packets, which addresses the adoption of the March 2010 school portfolio plan. An extensive overview of the plan was provided by the superintendent, Mary Doyle and Michael Allen. Thank you for your presentation. I let my comments that I made that night stand for themselves. I would also say to those, again, wondering what this board is doing to move this community forward, that portfolio plan is our plan. It's not the superintendent's plan. It's our plan, the district, and that includes the board. So we very much say to those who support mayoral control and want to know what our plan is, that's our plan. And if anybody attended that meeting, you saw aggressive, insightful questions about where the district was going and why it was going in that direction. And we'll see a vote tonight, and it'll be the board that adopts this as the Rochester City School District plan for going forward. Or we won't adopt it, especially if we don't hurry up, right? Look at Malik looking all serious over there. The committee recommended advancing Resolution 725 to the full board for approval. Next month's Excellence in Student Achievement Committee meeting will be held as a committee of the whole on Thursday, April 8th at 5:30 p.m. The committee will be presented with a summary of year-end performance. Dr. Silver will, I think, present that report, or staff will, and the facilities modernization plans for schools 2, 6, and the Edison campus. And I would be remiss if I did not thank Ms. Jackie Morgan for her ability to juggle all the agenda items that come before this committee. And Jackie, I will tell you, one of those items we got to somehow squeeze in there is this datacation report. Somehow you got to work your magic. Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams and the Audit Committee.
Mr. President, the Audit Committee met on Monday, March 15th, at which point we discussed the draft audit to the student placement and Medicaid. At that point, since these audits were in the draft form, we did not vote on them. Hopefully we will receive the final reports once the Auditor General receives the responses back from the administration. We also reviewed the Audit Committee charter and made some minor modifications, and we will forward the updated charter to the board for the adoption of the next meeting. The next Audit Committee meeting will be an Audit Committee meeting of the whole, and it will be on April 5th at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you. I'm just a very brief report because I know Commissioner Powell's got to go and I want to try to get these resolutions. I also wanted to mention to my colleagues that we do have a brief executive session after this meeting It's a very important executive session. I'm going to ask that resolution, when we get to the resolutions, I'm going to ask that someone make a motion to table resolution number 752, which is the calendar resolution. I didn't get that resolution in my packet, and I don't know if anyone else got it. But the superintendent has said that it's okay if we, it won't throw things off if we do it in April, so I would like some time to review that. Women's History Month, Thursday, please, please, please make every attempt to come if you can. It's at 5:30.
I'm hosting, Mr. President.
That's right, and Commissioner Elliott will be the mistress of ceremonies. Women's, I do just have to say that I am very saddened to see Dr. Hancock and Dr. G. Martino go. I do want to wish them well. It's great that they're moving up and not just moving out. It's great that they're moving up and going on to other superintendencies, but I've had the opportunity to know these two individuals, and I just want to say that I think it's a loss for the district. Dr. Hancock, I'm telling you, prior to human resources, we used to call it inhumane resources until you got there. So I just hope, I told the superintendent that I was a little bit worried about, just making sure that we can keep human resources on the trajectory of constant improvement, which has taken place under Dr. Hancock, and Dr. G, who's just always responsive to commissioners and to parents, will be sorely missed. But I wish them well in their future endeavors. And then lastly, and I'll talk to Commissioner Cruz about this, I definitely want to have a little bit more conversation around the parent council. I generally support a lot of the changes, but one of the things that I do want to discuss more in depth around the parent council is this concept of not allowing people who have children in the district if they work here. One of the things we need to encourage, I think, is to have all of our employees that go here send their kids to city schools. So I want to have a little bit more dialogue around that in the future. And that concludes my report. Anything else I'll put in my letter. One last quick point of personal privilege.
Yes,
Commissioner Elliott, then we'll move on to the resolutions.
Thank you, President Evans. I wanted to just mention that I visited Schools 2 and Schools 58, and Superintendent Brizard, one of the things that Beth indicated that she would like is to be able to have that Kentucky Fried Chicken spot for more parking, I think. So I'm just putting that
We'd like that too,
public
Commissioner.
forum. So she did tell me to talk about that. And I also visited School 2. I also visited School 41 with the new principal over there. And we also took a tour of the food services. It was myself and Felix Jacob, who's a parent, also serves on the Finance Committee. We met with Jerome Underwood and Leslie Fowler. And let me just say, Mr. Superintendent, I am very encouraged with what I see. And,
Thank you.
I am expecting that we're going to continue, that Mr. Underwood and Ms. Fowler are going to continue the good work that they have started over there. I'm very, very encouraged. And I would also say that, here in the district, we can no longer afford to be adversaries. We've got to work together in this district. How do we come together as a group? We're not going to always agree, but let's come together as a group to be able to do the right thing on behalf of our children, because it is really time out for the kind of resistance that we've had in this district for years and years and years. So thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me that point of personal privilege.
Thank you. We will now move on to the consideration of resolutions. We have several resolutions in front of us. The first set of resolutions, as customary with our agenda, are resolutions related to particular individuals with our human capital initiative. So these questions should be germane to, should be general questions, and if they are related to specific individuals, we will have to go into executive session. With that said, I'll entertain a motion for resolutions number 674 through 702.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Williams and seconded by Commissioner, moved by Commissioner White and seconded by Commissioner Powell. Any questions or discussions on 674 through 702? Hearing none, Commissioner Williams, how do you vote on 674 through 702?
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
White?
Yes?
Commissioner Powell?
Yes.
Commissioner Elliott?
No votes are as follows: 674 through 676, 682, 687, 688, 691 through 697.
Madam Clerk, have you captured those no votes?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the resolution carries. Resolutions number 703 through 715 are educational facilities resolutions, which the Finance Committee went through. They had they sat through two meetings that night. First, the budget presentation, and then their regular meeting. Commissioner Powell mentioned these in her report. I'll entertain a motion to, and most of these are related to schools. Is it moved?
Move it.
Move it, second?
Second.
Seconded. It's been moved, properly moved and seconded by Commissioner Cruz and Commissioner White. Questions or discussions around 703 through 715?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Elliott?
Yes. 710, is that, the name in there is Frederick Douglass Campus. Is that where the northwest and northeast schools are? And why are we still calling it the Frederick Douglass Campus? That's 710. I just want to get clarification on that. I don't want to be confused.
It is where northeast and
Yeah,
northwest are.
it is that. It's just, I guess, our nomenclature. We're looking to begin to change that
So
kind
that
of
should be
language.
changing some
We're going to
in the
begin to
future.
call by the addresses instead, but it's just the way we've been doing things.
Okay. And then 716, what is the budgeted amount? Because we are, okay, I'm sorry.
Yep, 703 through 715. Yeah, we'll get to that one.
Thank
shortly.
you.
Yep. Commissioner Williams?
On 706, I sent some question in, and I'm going through it now, and it had to do with the three companies. Once the bid was, they were the lowest bidders, and they decided not to, they withdrew their bids. And the question was, in a case like that, because it hasn't happened as much as it has in the past, but they withdrew their bid. My question was, we have the option to keep the bid deposit, but apparently we do not, or we did not. First thing is, what happened in this case? Why did we allow them to withdraw the bid, and did we keep the deposit?
Let me answer the second question first. We did not keep the deposit. This is an area of real challenge for us, commissioners. We're required from the bid opening date to award contracts within 45 days. That's a significant challenge to us to get to bid award. In this case, the bid opening was January 5th. The challenge for us is to get through the review of the bids and then get all the MWBE stuff done and have time to bring it before the board in 45 days. Now, that said, the most challenging part of that is the MWBE goals. We have a new gentleman going after that, and with much success, whereby I'm signing much less waivers than we have historically. So the other side to that, the opposite and equal reaction, if you will, is that it's extremely difficult for us to get to bid award within those 45 days. Now, in the three, and to get to the three responses specifically, I don't know if you had a chance to read the response that I wrote, but two cited financial reasons, and one actually cited the time. They all actually have the option of withdrawing their bids post 45 days without any other cause.
Okay, but now I noticed the two that, and going through this, the two that withdrew their bids because they said there was a mathematical error, they were awarded several other bids on some of the other contracts.
Correct.
Yeah, and then the third party withdrew because he cited that he could not meet the WMBE
in that particular,
right requirement, which
exactly.
Yeah, because everybody knows up front what the issues are, what the requirements are, correct? It's not like at the end of the awarding process, then you say, oh yeah, by the way, you have to meet this MWBE requirement. They all know that
Yes, in their letter as well, they actually said that they wouldn't be able to do it without a waiver, and we're pushing back on issuing waivers. You know, in other words, so go get the MWBE, because others are finding it.
Okay. And as a result, okay. Did the other, and I didn't see here.
We have them.
Okay. So the other, everyone else.
Is fellow contractors are finding. We still have some challenges in some of the trades. Hispanic electrical is a big challenge for us. As a result, we have capacity issues in Rochester with some trades. The most of the ones that I've been signing have been Hispanic electrical. So we need to do some outreach to see if we can, to make sure that capacity is not there and they just don't know about us. I find that hard to believe. But we have some capacity concerns in Hispanic electrical in particular.
Because one thing I noticed is that whenever it comes to the MWE requirements, the argument is we can't find anyone locally. Yet, I mean, there are a lot of firms that bid on these contracts that are outside of Rochester. I mean, that are or a lot of contracts that we award, not necessarily the construction contracts, but a lot of the other contractors we have are from nationwide. So the concept that they can only draw from the pool, minority pool locally, just doesn't, I mean, it just...
But we're improving there.
Right, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on 703 through 715? Hearing none. Commissioner Cruz, your vote.
Yes.
Commissioner Elliott, your vote.
Yes, except 705, I abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Powell.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes?
Commissioner Williams.
Yes for all, except 712, 713, and 714. Vote no.
Okay. I vote yes to all. We will now move on to resolutions numbered 716 and 717. These are procurement and supply resolutions. I'll start with a motion to approve, and then I'll go with a question from Commissioner Elliott. Now, a motion to approve?
Yes.
Move. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by Commissioner White. Questions? Commissioner Elliott, you had a question on
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. What is the budget amount for 716? The resolution states that it will not exceed budgeted amounts. What is that? What is the budgeted amount?
Commissioners, last year, just under $14,000 was spent on swimming pool chemicals. We have 10 pools in the district, and this year the budgeted amount is $16,500.
Could we put that in this, in the resolution, the budgeted amount? Some, in parentheses or something, so that we'll know the kind of money that we're talking about? This is on page 48.
That can be done. It's normally all of our contracts, obviously we have to pre-encumber the funds, so it's all approved budgets that are being used. And sometimes if we need, for example, more to be allocated towards swimming pool chemicals, there's an opportunity to do that, and possibly less for, say, signage or window repair. But it's all in a maintenance and repair budget. But our facilities manager said he had allocated approximately $16,500 for swimming pool chemicals for
Yeah, but
this year.
for informational purposes for this board, I don't want to just see it. I need to have more information. I don't know what the budget amount, what the budget amount is, or the budget amounts are. And it would seem to me that we can put that in quotes or whatever we're talking about. And then if it has to change, it just has to change. But I don't know, I'm being asked to approve an amount that it's not listed here. And I'm no longer on the finance committee, so I don't get the information from the finance committee.
So what would you add, Commissioner Elliott, what would you add the 16,000?
Well, after exceed budget amounts, and then in parentheses, whatever that budgeted amount is.
16,500, and that's
Yeah.
on line...
The last line, resolve, yeah. So in parentheses.
You would add exceed, after amounts, we put
Because I want to know
16,500.
I want to know when I'm studying this, when I'm reviewing this, what amount of money.
Are you making that amendment? Are you making that,
I don't necessarily have to do, he already told me what that amount is. I guess I could make a motion to amend it to include that, but in the future, for those of us who are no longer in the finance committee, we need to know what amount of money we're talking about.
Is that something you can add in the future, just the dollar amount after the?
In the past, we actually took how much money we had spent the previous year, and then we added a 20% to that, to not to exceed that 20%, and then we would have to come back to the board. It does become a little bit cumbersome to do that, in that the budgets are passed by the board, and departments are given the flexibility to use those funds as they are needed, when, especially with repair and operational items come up. However, we can do that, and we have historically done that. So it's up to the board if they want that. Yes.
So in other words, if you exceeded, a new resolution would need to be created, the board would need to vote each time we exceeded.
Right. For example, if we put in here that not to exceed $16,500, but say there was a crack in one of the linings of the swimming pool, and all of a sudden we'd have to spend another $17,500, and the board only approved for up to $16,500, we may have to continually come back to the board for some of these resolutions. And the point is that we've bid a contract, publicly bid it, and we are getting really the best value for the district. And if if a situation does come up that we have to repair or a decision has to be made quickly, we've got a contract that has been competitively bid. And the budgets have been priorly approved by the board, and we're going through the process actually now for budgets for next year. We would not exceed those budgets. We cannot exceed those budgets.
I'm not comfortable with that. I guess I don't understand really what the big deal is.
Yeah, but it wouldn't make a big difference if going forward you added that, you put it.
No, we can add that.
'Cause I don't understand.
Moving forward, we can add a number that would be our estimate of what we would spend on these.
Yeah, I mean, so you can put a number that would be your best estimate in
Yes.
there, and if you know.
Yes, we
Okay.
can do that.
If we see we're going to exceed it, we come back to the board, perhaps
That's why
be
I don't understand
proactive.
why that's a big deal of having to come back.
Well, the only big deal is the time constraints. It takes, you have to have the resolution a month and a
It
half
takes
prior
about
to the
7
board.
weeks to get these things passed, so if the pool would maybe
Right.
have to be closed in the interim until the board
But I
approves.
mean, if you put a dollar amount in there that you think is comfortable enough where you're working within that, it shouldn't be a big deal, right?
Right, no, we
So
can
if
do
you
that.
put if you put not to exceed $30,000 or whatever it is.
Well, or however we word it, our budget amount is $16,500.
Right.
We can certainly put that language in there.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we can do it moving forward, Commissioner.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Thank you. Anything else on 716? Anything on 717?
Yes. Let me just look at my notes. So, is this you, Gary, again? Through you, Mr. Superintendent? So tell me why we don't have budget amounts in this resolution?
Well, this is...
Or are we just entered into the contract itself?
Right. This is a resolution that BOCES requires in order for us to piggyback contracts that they have already bid. And the Project Legal Way is I believe it's a New York State program, and BOCES has been given authority to bid those items. And then only one school...
It's Edison Engineering.
Pardon, Edison Engineering is the one that would be purchasing any supplies from this contract. And it also includes some training also that BOCES provides.
Yeah. Project Lead the Way is the sort of the core curriculum for the major at Edison Engineering. So this program is what they actually students major in. So this resolution allows us to work with BOCES on training of teachers, etc.
Okay, so this is a contract that includes all of these companies?
Yes, all of these companies were awarded from a bid process for supplies for Project Lead the Way.
That comes through BOCES?
BOCES 1. Right? BOCES 2. Monroe 2.
BOCES
2.
So explain to me how the process works, Gary, in terms of, are we going to use all of these companies?
No, in fact, I did check with the instructor and at the School of Engineering and Manufacturing. And in the past, district used Perkins money to help fund the engineering and biomedical supplies. This contract allows the School of Engineering and Manufacturing to buy supplies from Project Lead the Way, if needed in conjunction with the BOCES contract. Additional supplies are purchased through district vendors. So it's only if they need something specifically for Project Lead the Way will they be using these vendors.
Have we used these vendors for Edison in the past?
For PLCW, yes.
So how much money have we outlaid for this kind of contract?
I do not have that number. I can get that number.
If Project Lead the Way is funded by Perkins, the entire Perkins allocation, I think is around, his birth is here, about $600,000, I believe, for the entire district. But that covers all of the vocational or technical, the career tech programs across the entire district. So I don't know exactly what the amount would be, but Project Lead the Way is for one school. We need to see what the allocation was for that particular school. But that's a federal grant that comes by way of state aid that comes to the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of Resolutions 716 and 717, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No on 717.
Okay. The ayes have it. We'll now move on to Resolutions 719 through 721. Then we'll go back to 718 separately. 719 through 721, which are information management resolutions. Again, these have gone to the Finance Committee. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Powell. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Commissioner White. Discussion, questions on 719 through 721?
On 719, I have a question because there is the contract, at least in my, showing the right packet, $1.3 million is the contracted amount.
Mr. President, this is one of the resolutions that we hope to be able to benefit from considerable cost savings by doing it this way, as opposed to a methodology in the past where we bought all of our separate software packages piecemeal. We're essentially, just like last month, we made a commitment to buy our insurance through an agent, through essentially a bulk contract. This is what we're doing here, and with I forget how much the proposed savings is, though.
Cost avoidance over several years is about $2.5 million. So that's the result of changing from individual licensing agreements on computers to what's called a campus agreement. And essentially it's a higher education model, and the district gets a pricing based on that.
Okay.
And we're the only school district that's not a college campus that's taking advantage of these savings.
But on here, but now is that model based on, because when I go through the contract, it's $2.07 a student and $52.58 per FTE.
Mm-hmm.
So my question was, not all students and not all employees have access to the computers. Or how do they do it? Do they do it based on who uses it, or they look at, we have 33,000 students, or?
It's based on the campus, I believe. I'll look for confirmation. It's the, is it the total number of students? Right. Total FT.
All employees in the district, you had access to computers.
Right.
You need to use that to put in the time and labor and have email accounts for the most part.
Okay,
So
and
they
then,
do have access.
and then what about the students? All 30, do they assume all 33,000 students, or 30,000 students for the most part?
For the most part, yes. I mean, we do either through labs, classroom computers, and library usage.
Okay. Now, what happens if and it has, in actuality, our enrollment is going down? So do they adjust for that over time, or no?
Yes, they do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of Resolutions 719 through 721 indicate so by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. 719 through 721 are agreed to. Resolution number 718 is a resolution pertaining to Follett Software Company. I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution number 718.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cruz. Is there a second? seconded by Commissioner White. Any questions around Solette Software Company?
No, well, one, it is $509.52. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say,
We ain't never spending that much.
It's what happens, Commissioner. When you approve a number, you go above that number. We have
See,
to bring it back.
but I think that this is a
no,
example of.
it's just,
Yeah.
you know, instead of saying 510 or 5, it's 509.52. Okay,
It's 509.52.
52.
I think
Okay.
a pencil around here costs $500.
Like the Pentagon spending.
By the way,
It's for a toilet seat.
Filet's a great library software system. So, really very good.
All those in favor of resolution number 718, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We'll now move on to resolutions number 722 through 752. The bulk of these resolutions are gifts, which we greatly appreciate, but I will entertain a motion to approve resolutions 722 through 752.
So,
It's been moved and
Second.
seconded. Questions or discussions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Commissioner Williams?
First one is 723, and just in going through the write-up, you made a reference to what's called the literacy zone. What is?
Sure, Gladys.
I've never-
In fact, we have, just as Gladys is coming up, this is somewhat related. We have a press conference tomorrow morning with the Toyota folks. We actually are getting a literacy grant. We're one of very, it was 5 districts across the country.
5 nationwide.
Nationwide were
One
awarded
of the
a
recipients.
grant. So tomorrow morning you see that at the press conference.
Yeah.
Is this part of Bob Duffy's literacy initiative?
No, this is a little different. This is that we only have a few schools, number 22 schools being one of them, and I think number 20 as well. This is where we actually have parents who are attending GED programs, work to experience programs at our adult learning facilities, are joined in with their kids at their school early in the morning. So they have a reading time together with parents and students. So it really helps to increase not only the parent involvement piece, but helps them in terms of reading together and developing those skills of being able to support their child's education. This is around our initiatives around healthiness, and we know that students basically don't really have a choice as to what's bought, what's put in the refrigerator, and so we really need to focus on the adults and help them in terms of healthier living, because they are the ones that are going to be carrying on the buying power of what they buy at the grocery stores and what goes on at home in terms of health. So this is to support that program as well. It's 3,600, and it's a program that is at the University of Rochester, but through their community health. It is very specific to Black and Latino families, so very culturally competent, talking about, you know, how do you make rice without putting too much oil and fat in it, and, you know, how to have the same food but make them less fatty. So it's a nutrition and exercise program.
Well, yeah, I mean, is there a defined
Yes.
geographic area for
Yes, there is. This was a part, the city was part of a grant that the New York State Education Department gave around literacy zones across New York. Paul Burke, through the adult education program, applied for one of the literacy zones. I believe it's much of the Northeast, am I correct?
Yep.
That is part of this literacy zone. So money's been given to the district to build adult literacy for the most part. So this really isn't about children, but much more about adults. And even the Toyota Family Grant is sort of a piggyback, not a big win for us, but all this is connected to bring adult literacy to to a particular geographic part of the city. If you'd like the specific, we can get you the specific zone, but it's the Northeast. It's the part of the question.
Or does it pretty much match the footprint of what was the
children's zone?
Children's zone.
I don't think it's the
I
same.
don't think so. No.
Okay.
This is
No.
very specific.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And you had a other question, right?
Yep. One other question, well, a couple others. On 727, I had a question, and I'm not sure they got an answer, but I don't think they understood the question I had. And it had to do, basically, not so much with the Committee on Special Ed, but with the preschool, the UPK, or the early childhood department. The question was, you know, I looked at one of your newsletters, and it's a fairly homogeneous group. It's a very homogeneous group. So my question was, what are we doing, or what will we do in order to build a diversified workforce?
I think that's a good question, and it's something that I'm aware of. We are having an overarching struggle with getting early childhood educators right now with the proper certification, and that has impacted our ability to do that. I am working with HCI on that. The certifications changed a couple of years ago, and we now have a birth through second grade certification and then a grade 1 through 6 certification. So what we're seeing in preschool is that we have fewer qualified, properly certified applicants in general, because a lot of the students who are going into college seeking a teaching degree are getting the grades 1 through 6 certification because it gives them greater marketability. Whereas the birth through grade 2 certification, we aren't getting as many applicants who are seeking that because that gives them only a limited scope of grades that they can teach. So we are struggling with this right now, but you know, efforts are being made. I have spoken with some of our local colleges and universities about efforts that we could make, you know, to try to entice more people from different minority groups and ethnicities. But we're having an issue with it as a whole right now, and it's in all the big 5 city school districts. It's been a topic of our conference calls.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
You got others?
Yes, one other, and it's really a request on 725. Is it possible to break those up, especially on the on the K to 8, the 9 to 12 school?
If I may.
They're kind of one package.
It's presented as a
Yes,
package.
exactly.
Actually, before we do that, can I ask a question about 727?
Okay, hold on, you guys
Yeah,
are
we'll
confusing
take
me. All right, so you had a follow-up on the 727?
Yes.
All right, then I'll go back to 725. Okay.
Sounds like this is going to take
Okay,
a minute.
all right, quick follow-up
Yeah,
on 727.
In terms, you know, I brought up this issue before that I think Commissioner Williams was alluding to, the diversity issue, and I think it was about 6 or 7 months ago, we talked specifically about the special education, the Committee on Special Education. I'm not embarrassed to ask, and I'm a lawyer, I'm pretty comfortable with this, what is the ethnicity of these parent representatives? I understand the dilemma or the challenge in getting diverse certified teaching staff, although I really still have ongoing concerns about that. But in terms of we have a parent representative, 2 parent representatives that are appointed here. What is the ethnicity of these individuals? I don't know either one of them.
I am not certain that I could say, you know, with surety what their ethnic background is, because that wasn't part of the questioning of when I interviewed them. But I can tell you that the parent representative that we have that's with us full-time right now is African American. We do have to add 2 more committees at this point in time for spring, and one of those is for annual reviews, and the other is for what we call the 4-Go-5 process for children who are getting ready to go to kindergarten. So this is a very busy time for preschool special education and holding these committee meetings to determine whether or not children would need specialized services in kindergarten, if they should be discontinued at this time at preschool. So there is a need for additional committees, and it's not a paying position, it's a voluntary position that comes with a stipend. I am struggling to find people who are willing to serve as much as I need them to right now. I could actually use 2 full-time parent representatives. The 2 names that have been advanced to you, both of those people were only available part-time, so I'll continue to seek parent representatives. And the requirement for that under the regulations is that they have to have a child with a disability in grades pre-K through 6, and they have to be a city resident, you know, with a child attending city schools. Those are the only stipulations in the legislation. Of course, we would want to seek parents of all of the ethnic backgrounds that are represented in our city, but there are not many people who can afford to volunteer at a position like this 5 days a week, all day, for, you know, an extended period of a couple of months.
I just think that it's important that we keep this issue out in front of us, because I do think the district, historically, not reflecting on anything that's present administration has done, has been neglectful of ensuring that our, particularly our Committee on Special Education, is representative of the community that they serve. And I hear you on the economic piece, that maybe people would struggle to be available to do that, but overwhelmingly, the number of children that are in special education are of color. And as I read a report that I did when I was in the New York State Legislature as an intern 2 decades ago, at least 2 decades ago, that was a problem then, and it continues to be a problem now. And I with all due respect, I repeatedly hear from this administration remarks like, well, it's a struggle, and we have a tough time getting people of color to teach or to serve on committees. If you need to solicit our help, because I don't think it would be that difficult. Put up or shut up.
I would welcome any assistance
Let
in
me
this
say,
area.
I'm willing to put up or shut up. If you need our help in identifying those students that want to be teachers, or those parents who could serve on these committees, this works both ways. Call upon us. We know people that perhaps you don't know. So
I will take you up on that offer,
do.
because it is a struggle, and I do recognize what you're saying, and I agree with that. And another issue that has come to my attention is that we have more and more children of mixed ethnicity, and that's why I would hesitate to guess someone's background. For instance, myself, I have Native American heritage in my background, but most people look at me and they say, there's a Caucasian woman. So, you know, there are a lot of issues involved in this, and I think we do need to be truly representative.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Back to this. Back to Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Williams, if you can again, 725. If you could just
725. If we could disaggregate some of the schools.
If I may, Commissioner, a linchpin of our presentation a few weeks ago was exactly the fact that we can't do that because it's all connected. If you pull one out, there's be a domino effect of the entire plan. That was part of our presentation. We're very clear that, for instance, and we look at the growing up K-8 schools, they're filling seats that would vacate in some cases the 7-12 seats or 7th grade seats disappear from other schools. So all of this is really interconnected. One piece being pulled out may allow this to fall like a deck of cards. So it's important to approve this as one resolution, one package. Otherwise, this won't work.
Any others on resolutions 722 through 752?
Are these comments?
Yep,
questions?
comments and questions on
Very
722 to
quickly,
752.
I promise. I said this during the ESA meeting, I'll say it again. The reason why I intend on voting for 725, and there is some interest in the community about this school portfolio plan, great interest, is that as compared to last year when we were talking about Franklin and closing down Franklin, one of the concerns of many of the meetings that I went to is there wasn't any plan put before them about what might take its place. And this current school portfolio plan gives our residents a look at what the future might look like at Franklin and at other schools, other buildings. I also must add there was little to no, I shouldn't say resistance, but commentary. Last year, my emails, my phone messages, I was inundated with opposition to the alleged Franklin plan. And this year, I heard none of that. And I must also indicate that, and Jean-Claude will tell you this, and then the President will tell you this as well, I did not see, I'm going to be honest, I did not see the resolve on the building-based leaders to do the things that were necessary to turn their school around. And that really bothered me in light of what they were looking at. And so this was a different situation. This is a different situation for me. I must say the graduation rates at the Franklin complex were not impressive this year. We did not see the continued growth that I was able to argue last year. There was some improvement there that did not appear this year. And finally, I will add that what I hear the superintendent say quite frequently and regularly, our community, not just the Franklin community, but our community needs a portfolio, a menu of options where people can have confidence, say, well, if my kids don't go to Soda, or they don't go to Wilson, they can go to this school or that school. I often tell a story when I was trying to get my son into SOTA and we got that rejection letter. We were devastated, absolutely devastated, because we didn't think there were any other choices. So we need a portfolio that makes people feel very comfortable. And I must say, not only am I changing my position from last year, I do that with a great degree of confidence that we're moving forward in a way that is dramatically different from last year and in a way that I think will help our citizens believe that this is a district that they can send their kids to school with and that their kids will graduate on time and with degrees that are meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions when this was first presented, particularly around the Wilson campus changes and then around the K-8 model. And I have to commend the administration and particularly the school community for advancing the proposal K-8. I'd never heard it suggested that that was an ideal school for a K-8, but what I did see was that this was a school community and a principal who really embraced the school choice fundamentals, which is finding a way to make their school more attractive. This is a school that is underchosen, and it has capacity to expand into a K-8. And when a school is underchosen, they need to take ownership of that situation and find a solution. And this is a solution that not only fills the building and makes use of its existing capacity, but also makes it more attractive to those who are there now and who might choose it in the future. So I applaud that school community for embracing the fundamental concept of school choice, which is continuous improvement. If you're an underchosen school, what are you going to do to make yourself into a highly chosen school? This school has embraced that. The whole school community has embraced it. It's the kind of float all boats scenario that this board, when it adopted school choice, was hoping to see. And so far be it for me to stand in the way of that kind of success when there really are there's no downside to it. The building has the capacity because it has historically been an underchosen school. The fact that it's highly successful makes one wonder why it's an underchosen school, except for reputation and the extreme poverty that is represented in that school. And so there's a community that's willing to put themselves on the line and change their reputation for the better, and I applaud them for it.
Thank you. Commissioner Elliott.
Yeah, my concern, and I've mentioned this in the Excellence for Student Achievement Committee, is I tend to believe that, Mr. Superintendent, with the other schools that we are considering opening, that this may be ambitious, that there may be some issues in the implementation of this program. And so that's what my concern is that we have these ideas. We have a couple of the school portfolio plan, and then there is the early college, and I think I'm missing one that's connected with St. John Fisher. So I'm just concerned that in terms of rolling this out, the issues may come up and that we may not be ready for this for the next school year. So that's my concern with this. I'll vote to support it, but I'm concerned that in terms of the implementation, that there may be some, and I think the word is perturbations, that may come up that may cause a ruckus in the community. So,
Commissioner Cruz.
Just a statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple comments. The presentation last week was excellent. I think it answered a lot of questions. I think we had some good questions, and there was some good interchange, and so I do appreciate the work that you've done on this. I get the feeling, though, we have to be quick on our feet. It seems that almost every week there's another change, there's another Arnie Duncan statement, there's another way of looking at things, there's more money coming to do this differently, and I think really it's about adapting to that change rather quickly and responding immediately. And I think those districts that are real good at that are going to be the ones that really take and use those resources well. And I think what you are showing is that in fact we can do that. My other comment is this. You know, I've spent a couple of months here. I'm the newbie as a commissioner, but for the last year and it's almost been a year since I made a decision to come to become a member of the school board. I kept hearing the same thing, and I was, you know, we got to do things differently. We can't do things the same way we have been. You know, no business as usual, and we're doing that. I mean, we're looking at the system, and when we can, we're blowing it up. We're putting it back together again. We're trying different ways of looking at things. Is everything we do going to succeed? I don't think so. But what if 80% did? 70% did? I think that would be a tremendous success story. And so we are doing things differently, and that's what I'm seeing. And I think that's a real a feather in the cap of the superintendent and his staff, who are looking at different ways of doing things and looking at different options that we have. And today our children need options. Today, in fact, there was a story that Kearney has now come up with a new system for emulating almost, I believe, college systems, so that people now do have concentrations and when they're going in as high school, much in the same way they're doing in college. So everybody's looking for that kind of a different approach, that approach that's going to work. And what I'm seeing is that exactly that from the staff. And I'm also seeing a certain amount of flexibility on the members of commissioners to take a look at those possibilities as well. You know, we need to get the work done. And those basically were my only comments. And I think the work has been great, and you definitely have my support. I told you you had my support at the committee meeting. You have it tonight as well.
Thank you.
I would just also say, though, that the bottom line in all of this is that is going to determine whether or not these programs work are our children succeeding academically.
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line. I mean, it can look glossy and slick and, you know, good plan, but if it's not graduating our students, then it's not worth anything.
The proof is in the pudding. If I may, Mr. President, let me very briefly, let me just say that because I'm on the executive committee for the American Association of School Administrators, and I'm also part of a very small group of superintendents who have regular conference calls with the Assistant Secretary, Thelma Melendez. So at times we get a heads up on what's coming. We try to adopt. If you take a look at our 5-year plan, it aligns very well with what's coming out of Washington. You are correct. We've got to do things differently. We have an opportunity. We're seizing it. And both commissioners, so you're right, the proof is in the pudding. These schools have to produce the kinds of graduates that our city is demanding.
And it was one of my colleagues that made a statement a couple of years ago, and they said we have to have, and I couldn't agree with this more, we have to have more than just Wilson and Soda. And I'm a graduate of Wilson. I bleed black and red. I love Wilson. 4 of my other siblings are graduates of Soda. I love Soda. But we have to be able to offer more, and it just can't always be Wilson and Soda. And you know what? This year, is it Northeast or Northwest? Northwest. Northwest is giving Soda a run for their money. They may have a higher graduation rate than Soda. So we need to do more of that, and we need to make sure that people don't start breaking out in hives as soon as their kid gets into 7th grade and start running for the hills. And I think that this begins to do that. I couldn't agree more in terms of the implementation. I think that that's key. We've seen tons of plans go. I believe that the superintendent is committed to seeing this through for the next couple of years. And I think the continuity is something that's been missing at this district, and I think that you're rooted in this community now, and that you are going to stay around long enough where you will have to answer to board members and community people if these things don't work. So I'm happy. I'm also happy about the K-8, because by implementing K-8 in schools that have a successful track record, not schools that don't, but schools that do, we're doing a great service to those younger kids and to those younger moms and dads that have kids coming up through the system. When you get a school like number 19 in the neighborhood that it's in, and it's still able to thrive and grow with the leadership of the principal and that staff, those are the types of things that we should be continuing to replicate. So while there are no silver bullets, while this may not in 2 years make our graduation rate go up 30%, I believe that it will, over time, substantially increase it. And I think that if we can continue to do this model of making sure that schools are opening with partners, like Northwest did, I think we can have success here. And I think, as you said, the proof is in the pudding, and I'm looking forward to that pudding tasting good and working well. So I look forward to what's on the horizon, and I support this, and the community should watch and hold us accountable. If it's not working, let us know, but don't just throw stones at it, but come up with a proposal that's sustainable and going to be able to work. And then lastly, I'll say, the time is now. The state has made it very clear. We don't have a choice but to radically redo things. And if we don't radically redo things, we will go by the way of the dinosaurs, and we will be extinct. So I look forward to this fall, and I look forward to moving forward on improving all of our schools and creating a portfolio that will make more parents want to stay in the city. So with that, we will vote on resolutions numbered 722 through 752. This will be a roll call vote, and I will begin with Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Cruz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Elliott, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Powell, how do you vote?
Yes, thank you, and goodbye.
Commissioner White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams, how do you vote?
I abstain on 724, abstain on 725, all the others, yes.
And I vote yes to all. Thank you, and Mr. Superintendent, we look forward to visiting these new locations.
Thank you for the trust. Thank you.
To seeing what's going to happen. Thank you. We don't have any unfinished business from the previous meeting. I will now move on to new business, which is the amended responsible bidder policy, which is here for a discussion item, and I'll yield to Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. President. We spent some time talking about this particular policy. They're really not. We try not to change it too much, but there were a couple issues that we looked at. Number one, we wanted to make sure that this process was very clear, that this process was very fair. We deal with a number of bidders that come in, a number of contractors. We wanted to make sure that they understood what they needed to do in order to be a successful bidder. The second thing is, and I'll have Chuck Johnson come up and talk for a second, but we also looked at what happens during an appeals process, and he's much more versed about this than I am. We'll have him talk about that. But we wanted to really make sure that if there was an appeal process or somebody had an issue, that we took it out of the district and we have a third party now looking at it. So there is a sense of, again, a sense of fairness in the process. And lastly, there's some change in terms of we ran into a problem with regard to being caught up in this kind of web between final determinations on adjudications for instance, in the New York State Division of Human Rights, and we've also addressed that. So I'll let Chuck give us more detail.
Good evening. 103 of the General Municipal Law provides a process for disqualifying bidders that do poor work. And what we wanted to do was make sure that we have as much teeth in the existing policies so that we can aggressively go after contractors that do poor work. And so in the criteria that's set out in Section 1 of the existing responsible bidder policy, we put in that the district could rely on negative evaluations. Every time a purchase order comes in to be paid, an evaluation form has to be completed by the facility staff. And so what we put in there was that if there's one or more negative evaluations that comes in on a project, the district can then disqualify that bidder for future, can then set up the process so that bidder could be deemed a non-responsible bidder for purposes of future work for with the school district. So that's the one substantive change that's in terms of the initial part of the criteria that we can look at when we look at bidders. The other thing has to do with determinations based on actions of state agencies. Our recommendation is that if there's a determination that's a final order of the State Division of Human Rights or other state or federal agencies, or decisions of a court, a dispositive decision, there's got to be, in essence, a final decision of a court, that a bidder has engaged in discriminatory or unlawful conduct, and then we cite the number of statutes, civil rights statutes, so that if a vendor has violated the individual rights of an individual, that can be a basis for disqualifying a bidder for future work with the school district. The commissioner mentioned the process we thought we needed to formalize the process for how you determine someone to be a non-responsible bidder, and that's what in Section 3 you find there. What we have proposed is that if the Director of Procurement and Supply finds that based on the response that comes in on the sworn statement or from any other credible source that there's a question about whether somebody is an appropriate bidder, that a hearing would be held. And that hearing would be held before a hearing officer or an arbitrator. A notice of hearing would go out. The company would be able to offer proof, as well as the district as well, and this independent arbitrator would make the determination as to whether somebody should be disqualified and then determine the length of that disqualification. Typically, you see these things being 1 year, 2 year. It can never be permanent, but it could be for a period of time, 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years. So that's a summary of what and the only thing I also did mention, we specified what we would expect to be seen in the sworn statement, that in fact this is stuff that's already being used, but that it would indicate ownership, management, affiliation, prior judgments, violations, penalties, prior contracts, subcontracts, and current construction projects, and experience and skills. All those things have to be in that form, which are in there now, but we thought they should be specified in the board policy. So that's a summary of what we've proposed. It's just for consideration tonight. You would vote on it either next meeting or the following meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
So thank you, Commissioner Cruz. I would ask my colleagues to take this document and look it over. This is a proposed amendment. If my colleagues feel as though they are in a position to vote next meeting, we will do it in April. If you think you need another meeting, we can do it in May, following our two-step policy approval process. Commissioner White.
Yeah, when I submitted this proposal, it had to be at least 6 months ago. I want to remind folks, when you talk about the board's plan and accountability and all this discussion about mayoral control, this is why this form of governance works. You got Commissioner Williams over here with his expertise in the area of accounting, and we got expertise going down the table. My affiliation is in the legal practice, and I had citizens come to me complain about the fact that they were working for people that were getting millions of dollars from the county, the city, and the Rochester City School District, and yet they had pending EEOC or outstanding EEOC determinations that were saying they discriminated. This is why this form of governance works. No offense to Mayor Duffy, but this is not his forte. People wouldn't necessarily be coming to him for this, but you got 7 people from diverse backgrounds where the community will hold you accountable. And they said to me, this is unacceptable. Tax dollars shouldn't be spent in this manner. I'll leave my full remarks for later on, but I do want to thank Commissioner Cruz for shepherding this proposal through the process, because my original resolution obviously was inadequate in so many ways. And in that regard, I should thank Chuck Johnson for taking his expertise in this area. Section 1I is a major improvement. I think I had originally just said determinations by the EOC and the Human Rights Division, but you are so right, your counsel is so correct to add the Age Discrimination Act, all those other acts that I hadn't really contemplated that are part of the national scheme for preventing discrimination. And of course the hearing process. I'm a lawyer by trade, and I'm embarrassed to say I did not think about the due process that, even if someone is determined to have violated the federal civil rights laws of our nation, that they too are entitled to due process. So Section 3 contains that process, and I am very appreciative, Mr. Superintendent, of the fine work that was done by the committee and by your staff to get this thing to be a model, I think, in our community. I think we can really stand up and say we have something that is unique. Then once again, I hate to beat the proverbial dead horse because the horse ain't dead yet. Your form of governance made this possible. This would not have happened under mayoral control. This is not Bob Duffy's forte. And again, literally, I can go down the line and say he does not have the diversity of experience that would bring this kind of accountability to this sacred institution. So thank you so very much for your good work.
Thank you. And again, my colleagues, I would ask you to please submit any ideas or questions or concerns about this, but before April, and if not, we will move on this.
President Evans, if I may, you alluded to either having it April or May, just to sort of push this to get it down and get it done. Can we have a April deadline to bring this up before the board?
Yep.
So we can get this done? Thank you.
Fine with me. We already heard all of our speakers. I will announce our next meeting before going
President
to...
Evans,
Yes.
I do have one thing to introduce.
Okay.
In light of the controller's audit, one of the things that I was interested in is for the board to have a financial disclosure statement. We've developed a financial disclosure statement. What I'd like to be able to do, Shanae will have copies of it at the executive session, but I wanted to be able to go through, and I haven't talked to Commissioner Williams about this, for us to discuss this in the audit committee, and we'll have copies available. And it's basically a format of the county's disclosure policy. So I introduced this for discussion, and I'd like to be able to move this to the audit committee for further discussion.
So ordered. That will be moved to the audit committee for further discussion and reported back in a subsequent board meeting.
Commissioner, if I may,
Mr. Superintendent.
I'd like to perhaps even have us extend that as part of our work right now on an ethics regulation we're working on, part of my administration, to extend that disclosure to my senior cabinet as well too.
All right.
It is something I was quite used to in New York having to do every single year, and I think we should do it here as well.
Well, I'm poor, so you won't be seeing much on mine. So next meeting is April 29th, 2010, 6:30. May I have a motion to move into executive session? We should not be
So
long.
moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. We are going to executive session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, real quick, I'm sorry. Did we table the calendar?
Yeah. Oh.
I don't have a...
No, we did not table it. We talked about it. So moved that it's tabled.
Actually, it's approved.